And please welcome Dr. Cordie Williams. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me, April. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so you are a chiropractor. You and your wife practice together. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. We're in sunny Carlsbad, kind of right between San Diego and LA, and just blessed to turn on people's nervous systems and keep their body functioning without drugs and surgery.
Yeah, that's exactly what people need right now. And you've got a family as well. You've got several kids.
Yep, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So
wow,
I'm
busy
really
house.
Both boys.
Yeah, well, as a boy mom, I know exactly what that life is like, and your wife is a saint. I'll tell you that right now. Especially with as busy as you have been on this latest calling in your life. You started out with treating patients in chiropractic care, and then at some point, you really felt like you needed to do something more. For not only California, but for the country. Tell us about how you became involved in your current movement, 1776 Forever Free.
Yeah, well, when the COVID situation kind of started, probably back in March, and 2 weeks to slow the spread turned into 2 years to slow the spread, right? Yeah. In those initial months, my wife and I kind of just saw the writing on the wall that if we didn't do something, April, that we were probably going to lose our business, we're going to lose our livelihood, and our kids wouldn't have a future. So kind of seeing that, like every good, hardworking American, we said, hey, it's time to protest under government tyranny and government overreach. Like what else can a good patriot do? So we went to probably 2 different rallies. On the third one, I found myself at the Sacramento State Capitol the night before. Crest White Strips, also known as Gavin Newsom, had permits. Yep, or you can call him Slumdog Millionaire,
right?
The Booger Sugar, whatever kind of nickname you like or prefer. But I mean, we just saw all these permits being taken on this real peaceful protest, not the one where they're burning, looting, and murdering, but a real peaceful protest, and kind of saw that going on. Early in the morning on May 1st of last year, so about 15 months ago now, well, the year before last, excuse me, it literally was one of those scenes where, there's maybe 25 police officers, CHP, and kind of fatigues, everything's easy going. There's maybe 85, 100 folks there. This is 9 a.m. By probably 11:30 a.m., so just 3.5 hours later, you literally had probably 300 police officers in full riot gear. You had folks out there that went from a number of 85 to 100 people out there to literally like 2,500 or 3,000. So people were Californians were ticked off. Over the next couple of hours, these riot gear police in full riot gear, they looked like professional football players. They grew from a force of 300 to probably 500. They pushed us back probably 500 yards. All the way to the edge of the sidewalk. I saw women being batoned, handcuffed, thrown to the ground. I just got ticked off, turned my hat backwards, grabbed the megaphone, and started to talk to these riot gear police about the oath they took to this country. Made them stand down. 20 million people saw it. Scoop, David Harris Jr., the Hodge twins, they all picked it up. We launched 1776 Forever Free about 3 days later.
You know what I love so much about your story is that you could have really just stayed silent on this topic, continued your successful career as a chiropractor, just kind of really been like, well, I really don't want to get involved with politics. I'm afraid of losing my license. But you didn't do that. You've got almost like an iron rod, of a backbone to be able to say, what I'm seeing happening right now is not okay. And at this point, I have to save, I have to do something to save the future generations, right? So you took action when other people would be afraid to lose their license. And I give you so much honor and I have so much respect for you because you're the type of person that America is craving right now. Everybody listening right now is saying, yes, 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 in their spirit when they hear you say that, I decided to stand up and do something about it. I decided to remind those guards and the police of their oath to the people. And that is, I think, our heart's cry here in America right now, is that everyone is saying, they're standing up and saying, I'm not going to let this happen on my watch. Certainly California has been the epicenter of so much corruption throughout this entire last 2 years. And, specifically what we're seeing in the news just in the last couple of days is the issue about the recall of Governor Gavin Newsom. And you have some important details to share with us that are breaking, actually, brand new news coming out regarding what's going on with Republican voters who show up to vote. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so pretty much, I mean, what we've heard, and I mean, to your point, there's been multiple sources, but I literally had an interview on my show, The Unfettered Patriot. It's a KCBQ station that literally transmits all the way up to North County, San Diego, all surrounding areas. I had Rachel Hamm, who's running for Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. She was on this morning, and she disclosed that there have been countless people that have contacted her campaign saying, hey, this is really crazy. We tried to go to the polls and place a vote for Larry Elder or whoever. Mm-hmm. And what we found is they said, no, you can't vote. We already have your vote. They're like, what are you talking about? Was my identity stolen? Nobody really has any answers. But over 70% of voters out there that are Republican are finding this to be the case. So if you're sitting in our shoes, April, and you're like, well, what's going to happen with the recall? Emoji, right? We already see it. It's looking a lot like when, between 2 and 5 in the morning on November 3rd, when I was at Mar-a-Lago, everybody went home to eat cold chili in their underwear and play bingo, right? It's like kind of crazy. Oh, and then there's all these dumps the following day. It's kind of seeming like it's a little fishy.
It seems to me that since the people, have made it very clear, even the fact that, it's gotten so bad that they had to, put the petitions together, get the signatures to recall him. It's evident that people of California are done with his horrible totalitarian dictatorship of the state. And now they're finding out that not even their recall vote is going to be counted correctly. So would you say that the best course of action now is that this is going to have to, be taken to the courts at this point?
Yeah. And I mean, some of the courts are rigged, but I mean, I guess what I want your viewers to understand, you could say this about anything. You could say it about the voting. You could say it about, should you be on Instagram? Should you be on Twitter? Should you be on Facebook? Like, understand, folks at home, is if you guys don't get involved and we don't make noise, imagine that steamroller rolling across the streets of your cul-de-sac that's flattening out the cement or the gravel. That's how quickly we're going to go from this republic that we love and so much, that we love so much, into socialism and into communism. Right. So we don't have a different recourse, really. It's litigation, suing these jerks for what they're doing. That's nefarious. It's unlawful. It's unethical. It's unconstitutional. Like,
illegal, right? I mean, all the things. All the things. I want to bring this point up. Do you ever feel like, and I think a lot of people listening right now think, the patriots always seem to have to follow the law. We have to go through the courts, but they don't have any laws or rules. They just get to do whatever they want, steal elections, steal recall votes. And yet our due process is we have to follow these guidelines set out by the Constitution, which we're there to protect us. But, this is going to have to be, an act of God to help intervene in this way, to reveal the true corruption, and be able to shine a spotlight. But, I so appreciate what you're doing. And we have put your link to your website, 1776foreverfree.com. If you go there, you can find out, you've got amazing things on there that, of all the people I've talked to, nobody's doing quite what you're doing in this way, where you're offering Constitution classes. And I think that is so awesome.
Yeah, well, if we don't get involved right now, and I always say from stage, and I say it all over this country, if you're not involved in activism, civil disobedience, if you're not involved in education, and if you're not involved in litigation with your time, your hands, and your money, what are you really doing? If you're not doing one of those three things and you're not using time, hands, and money as a way of facilitating a change to litigation, activism, and education, what are you doing? Like, what's your purpose? And I think there's a lot of well-intended folks that are just misguided on, like, what do we do? Because we've never been, these are uncharted waters, April, for a republic. Like, people in your lifetime, my lifetime, they've never thought of like resisting the government, protesting, but this is where we are, people.
Yeah, and I really want to point out too on that topic of, knowing that these people in California have already gone, tried to place a vote, can't place a vote. Those of you watching, if this happens in your area for any election, right? We can't have this mentality of, well, my vote's already stolen. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to show up. So tell the audience here how important it is that no matter what you hear about, recall votes being taken or, fraudulent things happening regarding voting, the most important thing is that people have got to still show up in person.
Yeah, I mean, you only have a voice as long as you're willing to lean in and accept the challenge to express that voice, right? Because General George S. Patton always said, 5 more seconds of fear on the other side of that is courage.
Yes.
It's like, what are you willing to do to say, you know what, I'm going to be a stand for the souls that are 6 feet under. I'm going to be a stand for the names on the tombstones at Arlington, for the names on the Vietnam Memorial. And that in our kids' future, April, is really what we're talking about today. It's like, whether it's the election, whether it's the mandates, like whatever you want to go into right now with what's happening, if you're not being a stand, you're complicit because you're part of the problem.
You're absolutely right. So this is a call to action. Everyone needs to get involved. There's no more being comfortable hiding behind your computer screen and complaining about what's going on, but not doing something. And can you tell us a little bit about for those that are watching all over the country right now, what can they do on the local level that would be the most effective? That you're seeing to be active? We talked about earlier in some other interviews, attending school board meetings and, trying to get involved at the local level in the city. But what would you say would be the best way for people who say, I really want to make sure we have safe elections for 2022, and I want to make sure that my voice is heard?
Yeah, I would say number one, really talking to your Republican delegation in your city or county and looking into how you can become a pollster. Because we need folks for, whether you're talking about Atlanta, any of the swing states, you resoundingly hear all the time that people were trying to get in, people were trying to go and they weren't being allowed to. And April, I don't know about you, but for me, if I'm designed and designated to do a job and somebody says on game day, when I'm supposed to be throwing dimes downfield, I'm supposed to be throwing touchdowns, hey, Dr. Williams, you can't get in. I mean, I'm going to tell them to read between the lines I'm going to figure out a way to get in. And so, I think people have to be trained to do that type of resistance. I don't think anybody was expecting, not in a million years, that essentially a government-based employee, meaning somebody working for the federal government on any capacity, would resist them from having an opportunity to vote. But that's kind of what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. Tell us what else people can do as far as resources on your website that are available. Other than the Constitution classes, what other things that you have for the general public to take advantage of? Well,
I mean, one thing I think everybody should know is the Communist Manifesto. Okay.
Yes, that's so important.
There's a guy, a congressional representative from Florida named A.S. Herlong, Herlong. He stood like right in the middle of the House of Representatives. He's on the congressional floor. And January 10th of 1963, so this was about 9 months prior to Kennedy's death, he's literally right there on the floor of Congress, and he's talking about, like, hey, if we don't get our act together, if we don't watch out for these, America is going to be taken over by Karl Marx's playbook. And here it is. Yeah. Here's the 45 points that we need to watch out for. And what
I'm
do you know?
so glad you posted
Now,
that. You know,
40
you're
now it's
yeah.
in place. We're 70% there on completing it.
You know, what's interesting that you say, and I'm so glad you're educating people on that, is that so many people come to me and say, I just don't understand what's happening. And what I have to explain is, well, what's happening is this is communism in America, and it completely infiltrated our country without us even realizing it because we were complacent and asleep at the wheel for too many decades. And you know, the whole other topic of the church really not being involved in politics because there was such a push from the pulpit to say, you know, politics are evil, just focus on Jesus. But, you know, again, here we are at this crucial point in history because Christians haven't been involved in the public square. They haven't gotten out and been involved in, you know, local politics, right? And we sent our congressmen to Washington to do our deeds. And now we're finding out, unfortunately, the hard way, that they really didn't have our best interest in mind and continue to just tax us to death and things like that. But I wanted to know, you know, you're so involved on a local level. You really get yourself out there, making sure to educate the public. You know, it seems to me like you would be the perfect candidate to run for an office in California. Have you thought about that idea at all?
Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. We launched an exploratory committee probably in mid-June at the Tampa event that Clay Clark put on, the Health and Freedom Conference. And we launched an exploratory committee for U.S. Senate against Alex Padilla. I'm not a candidate yet, but what we're trying to do is just reinstill red, white, and blue values. Red, white, and blue, people that want to raise their kids in love, April, like you and I do, with kindness and with our narrative and kind of way of thinking over our kids versus the government's. If you want to do that and that kind of resonates with you, what you can go is you can go to www.foreverfreeact.org. That's foreverfreeact.org. You can donate money to candidates or future candidates who kind of have those red, white, and blue values like I do.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. We're going to definitely put the link up there so everyone go check out these websites. Dr. Williams, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your perspective and your love for education because that is so important for us to understand what we're up against, the communist Marxist playbook, and then help us to grasp what needs to happen for change so that we can preserve our country's